Welcome to part 36 of Basic Training. Today we're going to cover everything you need to know to play Mute City on 150cc. We're going to mix things up a bit on the usual try-hard build and go with Wario, Mach 8, Leaf Tires, and Paper Glider. This is a build that places a much higher emphasis on speed over Mini Turbo, and in particular anti-grav speed with the Leaf Tires. Now before we get started, this is canonically the first track in the game with so-called F-Zero physics, which is kind of like the underwater bit in Dolphin Shoals where if you hold down, you'll stay in midair for longer, and if you hold up, you'll get back to the track more quickly. It's going to come up a couple of times throughout this video, so I just thought I'd mention that here. Now when the run begins, hold down right so that you can make your way over to the right-hand side of the track. Driving over these pinkish-purple parts of the track is how we're going to get coins, and if you drive over the whole thing, you should be able to get 7 coins by the time you make your way around the first turn. You want to start a right drift kind of early so that you can take this next turn as tightly as possible, typically right around when you grab your third coin. Build up a Super Mini Turbo and then release and start another right drift immediately, hitting the double orange boost ramp on the right side while building up another Mini Turbo. After that, just drive straight while hitting the rest of the boost pads, and then when you go off the ramp at the end of the straightaway, hold down on the joystick to give yourself a bit more airtime. This will allow us to land in a right drift and still take a good line around the next turn, which is faster than if you were just to land earlier and then start a right drift. In the spin boost section, there's nothing that's really conceptually challenging to figure out. You just hit the first spin booster and then left hop into left drift around the second one, and then just drive straight into the third one. If your alignment is bad like mine is, then you can do a couple of hops to angle yourself toward it. Mechanically this can be a bit tricky to figure out, but I found that as long as you take tight turns, it shouldn't give you too much of a headache. The rest of the track, however, is a colossal nightmare. It all starts with this annoying little maneuver that you have to do where you hit the coin pad on the right to snag 2 coins, hit the orange boost pad, and then go back to the coin pad for your last coin. If you come into this section at a bad angle, it can be pretty much impossible to do this properly, but you basically need to make sure that you have no fewer than 9 coins by the time you're done here. The next step is to hit the final orange boost pad and make your way to the left-hand side of the track. You'll see a bit of off-road over here, and this is where we're going to use our mushroom. However, the turn is really tight, so what we're going to do is start a right drift and immediately go wide until just after we pass the first bit of off-road. Then we're going to hang a hard right while braking for just a bit so that we can get as close to the right edge of the off-road as possible. Use your mushroom as soon as you get to the off-road, and then once you come out, hang on for just a fraction of a second before releasing the Ultra Mini Turbo. This serves 2 purposes. First, after releasing the Ultra Mini Turbo, we need to do 2 left hops for alignment, and we don't want to fall off the track. Second, it allows us to keep the Ultra Mini Turbo boost for a bit, which is going to help us out with, well, just watch. While not quite as bad as the Shy Guy Falls shortcut, this is way more obnoxious than it looks. Let's break it down step by step, and quick thanks to Conrax for helping me out with getting more consistent at this, and with figuring out how to explain it properly. First, start that right drift at about the top of the hill after doing the 2 left alignment hops. Now just before you get to the cut, a lot of things need to happen more or less all at once. First, you want to get even closer to the wall by flicking right on the joystick so that you can minimize the amount of off-road that you need to cut. Then, just like the Shy Guy Falls cut, you need to put the joystick in a neutral position and jump well before your brain is telling you to. I personally try and time the jump at just about the time that my front wheel gets to the barrier between the track and the off-road. The next step is to hold down on the joystick right after doing the jump so that you can get a bit more airtime, which will help you clear the cut. Finally, if you did everything right, you'll land on the ramp at the end of the cut where you can then trick. To finish up the lap, just hold down on the joystick, trick off the next floating platform ramp, and then keep holding down to clear as much of the final patch of off-road as possible. Laps 2 and 3 are basically the same as lap 1, except that we don't need to grab coins, so what we're going to do for the first turn is start a right drift and hit the first 2 orange boost ramps on the lap. The world record is basically just a cleaner version of my run, except for the fact that they use Waluigi and Mr. Scooty instead of Wario and Mach 8. You might recognize this as being a fairly different setup than what we used, and it places a lot higher emphasis on Mini Turbo over speed, so clearly the strats must be pretty different, right? Well, no actually. You'll notice from what you're seeing on screen now that the strats that they're using are almost identical to what we did, with the exception of an additional Mini Turbo in the spin booster section. Even the Shroomless shortcut looks more or less identical, so what gives? Well, I've got kind of a mouthful as to what the advantages and disadvantages of the different builds are, so let's talk a bit more about that while checking out my current personal best. And by the way, If the video has been helpful to you so far, don't forget to click the like button so that it can get spread to more people. Thank you very much. You are awesome. Now, Mute City. Kind of an interesting story as to how this run came together. I first grinded out the track with the Waluigi Scooty build, and I was able to get a really low 155, which I was honestly pretty satisfied with. But then I realized I forgot to hit the orange boost pads on laps 2 and 3, so I got to work on the track again. And man, oh man, did it take a long time to get a run together, mostly due to how annoying it can be to hit the shortcut on all 3 laps. But after a ton of grinding, I did manage to cut another half a second or so off my PB. And then I got curious. Part of the reason that the shortcut is so annoying to hit is that Waluigi Scooty is a much slower build than Wario Mach 8, which is the build that world records used before the Waluigi Scooty build. So I decided to switch to that build and experiment a bit to see if it would be easier to hit the shortcut with it. Ironically, not only did I find that the cut was a lot easier to hit, but that with the exact same strats I was using with the Waluigi Scooty build, I was saving a lot of time. I'm talking more than 1/10 of a second per lap, just due to being faster in all the straightaways. So I got to work one more time to get the run that you're watching now. So if this build is so much faster, why bother with Waluigi Scooty at all? Well, it all comes down to the Shroomless cut. While it is easier to hit the cut with Wario Mach 8, Waluigi Scooty has a much smaller hitbox, which lets you do something called fast Nisk by getting even closer to the wall. I won't go into much more detail than that here, but just know that it saves an unbelievable amount of time over the shortcuts you're seeing me do. The problem is, it's way harder to pull off. Now it should be pointed out that even if you do miss the fast Nisk, I found that just getting closer to the right hand side of the wall tends to make the cuts that you hit with Waluigi Scooty faster than the ones that you get with Wario Mach 8. So when you're putting your runs together, you just need to decide whether to take the safer but slower shortcuts with Wario Mach 8, or gamble on faster cuts with Waluigi Scooty. And that's everything you need to know to play Mute City on 150cc. Thanks again to Conrax for all of his advice on how to get a good run together for this track. He's got a YouTube channel that I linked to in the description, which will point you in the direction of his other social media accounts as well. Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next one.